But first, this week, the Zealots took over Canberra, or more specifically, the National Press Club. Not one, but two Zealots, both embracing quasi-socialist ideologies, both born overseas before migrating to this country, both women who, weirdly and disturbingly, seem to believe that they know more about how to bring up your children than you do. To the casual observer, it is hard to distinguish the two Zealots one from the other. Both are well-spoken and ooze the moral sanctimony and certitude of the PowerPoint CEO class and the self-confidence of the virtue-signalling boardroom and the focus group. Zealot A is our eSafety Commissioner, a job and title that has never existed before but was invented by the Turnbull government and embraced in turn by Scott Morrison, Peter Dutton and Anthony Albanese. There is a fundamental lie at the heart of this position. Supposedly, its job is to protect children from the evils of the internet, but to date, it has actually concentrated more on protecting those who, in my opinion, do more harm than good to our children, namely the hardcore activist transgender crowd. But you can be the judge of that. So far, the eSafety Commissioner, an unelected Canberra bureaucrat, has censored a professional healthcare worker, a midwife and breastfeeding expert who claimed that men cannot breastfeed. Censored. Also censored was another woman for merely reposting the details about an LGBT queer club at a school. Also censored. And censored a man for suggesting that a transgender man, i.e. woman, biological woman, who posted online stuff about drugs and bondage and bestiality and other fringe sexual practices was not the ideal person to represent Australia at the World Health Organization. That man, for criticising that other transgender man, was censored. Not a great track record, I would argue. But now this zealot is embarking upon a new and, in my opinion, very sinister crusade to ban people under 16 from social media platforms, everything from Facebook to YouTube.
eSafety will need to be satisfied that the platforms are going to identify the users under 16 on their services now, and for the companies to be clear about how they will systematically prevent them from joining their services through effective approaches to age assurance at sign-up.
This censorship flies completely in the face not only of the Western culture of free speech and freedom of expression, but worse, threatens to damage our national interest. As Donald Trump has said, and J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio have reiterated, the Americans will not tolerate any partner nations if they attempt to restrict free speech. Indeed, the irony is that if this zealot, this censorship czar, were to return to her homeland of America, she could find herself in jail, a troublesome idea raised by a journalist at the press club.
So no concern if you were to enter the US?
I'm not planning on going to the US anytime soon. I'll defer to my DFAT colleagues to see whether or not they see risks.
Thank you.
Unbelievable. Our eSafety Commissioner is terrified of going back to her homeland, and she should be nervous. By her own admission, the eSafety Commissioner doesn't really consider America's First Amendment, her birthright, to free speech to have any application here in Australia.
The First Amendment does not apply in Australia.
This zealot even recognises that the Australian government and herself in particular are already jeopardising our relationship with our most important ally. By all means, let's have the debate about restricting and classifying content online, or not allowing smartphones during school hours, or whatever else. But to ban teenagers, all teenagers under 16, from using all these media, including YouTube, are you serious? Disgracefully, the eSafety Commissioner is dissembling to sell this not as a ban, but as a delay, using a fatuous analogy about swimming between the flags.
Here's what parents need to know right now. 1, it's not a ban, it's a delay. We're giving kids a reprieve and more time to build up those online swimming skills before facing the pressures and dark forces of social media.
Good grief. Celine Baumgarten, who with the Free Speech Union of Australia successfully won her case against the eSafety Commissioner, was rightly dismissive of this entire notion.
Got to, teach them how to swim between the flags, yada yada. Like, she's obsessed with this correlation. But if you think about it for longer than 5 seconds, it really makes no sense. Like, how are you going to teach a child how to swim by banning them from being anywhere near water? So even when they do go in the water for the first time, they might have all the theory, but they've got no experience with it, so it's just, like, it's stupid. Secondly, we all know that this government and this bureaucracy couldn't give a about kids, because if they did, they'd be going after the porn. They'd be banning Pornhub, they'd be banning that would be the focus, but it's not. It's social media. And as I've said before, like, no one's disputing the harm that social media can bring to teenagers. We all know it's, it can be bad. But you know whose decision it is whether teenagers go on social media or not? Their parents, not the government.
Their parents, indeed. We saw how eagerly Australian governments of all hues imposed their draconian COVID restrictions upon us, some using police brutality to do so. Free speech is the most precious of all democracy's gifts. Yes, it has its dangers, but previous generations have dealt with them. Restricting and policing obscene or dangerous content can be done without blanket bans on every kid up to 16 years old being banned from all social media. Whenever a government decides it knows better than the parents how to raise the children, tyranny and oppression are not far behind. The far greater danger to children is done if free speech is obliterated and those kids grow up in a totalitarian, authoritarian, Orwellian nightmare of draconian government oppression.
So if they fail to remove the content, then we can go to the search engines such as Google or Bing to really minimize the amount of content the Australians can see.
Minimise what Australians can see. Which brings me on to Zealot number 2, Zealot B, a self-confessed zealot, no less.
Our party must pre-select more women in winnable seats so that we see more Liberal women in federal parliament. Now, I'm agnostic on specific methods to make it happen, but I am a zealot that it actually does happen.
Yes, Sussan Ley, the leader of the opposition, also spoke at the press club this week and revealed she is a zealot for more women in the Liberal Party. Is that it? Is that all you're passionate about? Seriously? Male or female? If we're going to have zealots, the Liberal Party needs zealots against our immigration, which is out of control, zealots for national pride and security, zealots for a booming economy, zealots for peace and prosperity, zealots who've got Donald Trump on speed dial, zealots against collective neo-Marxist globalist climate scams, zealots for Australia's past and proud colonial history, zealots against racist, woke, tribal, left-wing, divisive political virtue signalling. Instead, we got this.
I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today.
Unbelievable. Apparently Sussan Ley has forgotten that the only victory the Liberal Party has had since 2019 was when it said no to The Voice. Yet here she is, pandering to the welcome to country nonsense that has incensed most conservative-minded Australians. But it got only worse.
Having a stable energy grid which provides affordable and reliable power for Australian households and businesses, and reducing emissions so that we are playing our part in the global effort.
You cannot say you care about the economy if you are pursuing net zero emissions reductions. They are mutually incompatible, in my opinion. But back to free speech. Surely Sussan Ley is a zealot for protecting parental rights and the right to free speech.
We have allowed some of the smartest people in the world to make billions of dollars by peddling addictive technology to children. And it is shortening their childhoods. Parents need government in their corner.
Oh, there you have it in a nutshell. Sussan Ley is indistinguishable from the eSafety Commissioner, both keen to use all the censorial power of the state to restrict your right to decide what your kids can hear, see and talk about around the kitchen table, and all Australians to restrict the free access to information. Sussan Ley, rather than fighting against this disgrace, appears to be every bit the anti-free speech zealot that the Labor government and their so-called eSafety Commissioner are. We can only hope that maybe Donald Trump, JD Vance and Marco Rubio manage to do what the Liberal Party manifestly are incapable of, recognising that parents, not random bureaucrats and certainly not the government, should be the ones who decide what knowledge and information is best for Australia's teenage children.